Welcome back, everybody. Sam Windisch, Windisch Gunworks again here for episode 3, and we are finally getting into the metal cutting and making a gun. So again, what we're going over today, if you forgot, we're going over completing our frame and what to check to make sure your frame is going to be in spec, what I look for in a good frame. Okay, there are definitely some bad frames in there that I've run into that I will dime those companies out for you, and I hope you never buy from them again. We're going to get into what we've already done here. Don't worry, I already filmed this, okay? I'm just giving you the sneak preview, okay? Fitting our less bare custom oversized barrel bushing with our slide. And getting our barrel fit into our barrel bushing. Okay, so here we go. We got our, we're looking like a gun, kind of, right? So now we kind of look like a gun almost. Got our barrel in there now. Okay, so we're gonna pop that out, and we'll get into talking about our frame. If I can remember how the heck to take a gun apart. And this thing's, you're going to find out, this thing is tight. Okay. So now you don't want to come apart. There we go. This, you're going to see here in a little bit, man. This barrel bushing, we got this thing super tight. That's probably going to need a little bit of extra cleaning up. Okay, so completing your frame. As I talked about earlier, I have a mill, and I use my mill to cut my rails. That I believe is a more precise way to do it. I know that not everybody has a mill, and that's why I didn't show it, because if I showed it, that lesson is going to fall on deaf ears. If you have a milling machine or you are a hobby machinist, you already know how to do what I would show you, or you would understand the principles of taking measurements and cutting slots and grooves. So that's why I didn't show that. The people who are going to do it with a mill already know how to do that. But what I am going to do is show how you can get the tightest fit possible by doing some math and taking some extra steps while you're using your rail cutting jigs, things like your Phantom jigs and your Matrix Precision cutting jigs, that if you just do some math ahead of time, you can get a better product and a better frame at the end of the day. Now, I did an aluminum frame for this project for a couple different reasons. As I mentioned earlier, the whole premise behind this specific build is to have a lightweight handgun, a lightweight 9mm commander that's going to be comfortable for somebody with small hands to shoot. So a lightweight gun, aluminum makes sense. This is actually the first time I've ever used an aluminum frame. I'm strictly a steel guy. But working with this aluminum frame has been just fine. I can't fault it really in any way other than it's not as strong as steel. I guess a little review for this Stealth Arms frame is it's wonderful so far. It is perfectly in spec. And the first thing you need to do when you get an 80% frame, even a 100% frame, any 1911 frame that you're going to build on, the first thing you need to do is you need to check the deck height. You cannot cut your rails until you check your deck height and adjust that if necessary. Okay, so I'm actually unprepared because I need a slide stop. Well, while I dig one out here, I'll talk to you about deck height. So deck height is the measurement from the top of the frame to the center of the slide stop hole. Okay, from the top of the frame to the center of the slide stop hole, and that measurement is going to be 0.450 inches. Okay, so remember when I was talking about tools, I said that depth micrometer right there has a couple of uses. Well, this is one of them. Okay, so your standard slide stop is going to be 200 thousandths in diameter, so 0.200. This hole right here should be 0.201, which is a number 7. It's a number 7 drill. Okay, so it's the number 7 drill hole, 0.201. Most slide stops today have a 200 thousandths slide stop. Some have a 0.198. The older ones, okay, older 1911s are going to have a 0.198. So you're going to want to check. You're going to want to actually measure it. Now I've already measured this. I know that this is 0.200 Harrison. Again, this is a Harrison design slide stop. So I know that that's 0.200. The reason you need to measure it is because we can't just simply measure down to the center of the hole by eyeball and be accurate when we're talking about thousandths of an inch. We need something to measure against. Now, if all you have is a set of calipers, hey, no worries. Okay, no worries. Why are you reading that? Okay, so to show this, to do this with calipers, okay, you've got a little depth measuring deal down here. All you're going to do is stick this guy out, stick it on the top of your slide stop that is inserted, okay, right there in the middle, and bring your caliper right down to the top. Now, I wouldn't even say these are somewhat accurate doing it like this. I've never really met a set of calipers that was very accurate measuring depth. Just because the little depth sticks, yes, this thing is kind of everywhere. They kind of wiggle around in the back. Okay, maybe Starrett's or Mitutoyo's or something like that would be a little bit more rigid, but you know, these little $30 ones, you know, made in China. You know, this is cobalt. They're kind of loose back there, so you got to kind of develop a technique with doing this and take the measurement, you know, a good 5 or 6 times. So let's see. Yeah, that's not. I know that's not right. Okay, so this is saying 0.353. Okay, now the reason it's saying 0.353 and it's in spec is because the slide stop is 200 thousandths wide. So to measure down to the middle of it, we have to add 0.100, which would be the radius of the slide stop, to the measurement that we're taking. So if we added that, it would be 0.453. Let me see if I can get a different measure this way. Well, 452. See how this changes? 45. Yeah, there we go. 451. Okay. So these all, you can make these read whatever you want them to read. So you kind of have to develop a technique if you're going to be measuring with this. But let's bust out a depth micrometer and let's take a reading with that. Let's see what this says. So I know it's going to be around 350. Holding this to the top, and again, I would take this measurement 3 times, just, you know, at least twice. You know, just make sure I'm getting the right measurement. So I'm holding that top to the top of the frame there. Boom, man, on the money. All right, I'm gonna lock that. Ha. On the money. Okay, this is reading 0.3502 perhaps. Okay, so add the 100 thousandths for the slide stop. That means that this deck is perfectly in spec, 0.450. So I do not need to worry about adjusting the deck height, and I have not. I have not adjusted the deck height of this frame at all. I took the measurement. I was happy with it. It was right on spec. No need to do that. That does not mean if you get a Stealth Arms frame that this will be in spec. I'm just saying I took the measurement myself to verify, and it was in spec, so I did not need to adjust it, which means I was able to go straight to taking measurements off my slide to figure out exactly how I needed to cut. Okay. I kind of got ahead of myself here. The first thing I want to do is I want to find out the dimensions of what I'm going to cut. Okay, so I want to find out the width of my my rails. And again, you can use your calipers for this. So this is reading 6, 67. There we go. 753. Okay, so we'll write that down. I'll kind of draw it out here. When you're doing this, folks, let the pencil do the do the memory. Okay, so we'll kind of draw our frame there. So our width 0.753. Okay, so that is how wide we are here. Put that aside. So now the first measurement I'm going to take on the frame is inside here. Okay, inside the slide itself. And I'm always going to trust but verify. Okay, since I'm using calipers to do this, I'm going to take a couple different measurements. I'm getting 632. Okay, so now this is kind of a tricky artist deal here, but I always like to draw the slide. Just kind of draw this here. Draw that there. Okay, so this is kind of a slide. That way I can write down the measurements and I know what is what by visually looking at them. I'm a very visual person. Okay, so we just took this measurement right here, and this is 0.632 inches. Okay. Next measurement I want to take is this measurement. So the width of this groove here. Now, looking at it like this, it's easy to get the measurements backward with what we're looking at in terms of the frame. Okay, especially when we haven't cut it yet. All right, so this measurement that we're about to take, the width of the grooves, okay, in the slide is we want it to be as close to this total measurement as possible. Okay, the 753. Now keep in mind, I took that on a frame that's already been cut and fit. All right. So let's see what that measurement is. Oh, you are not. You're gonna fight me. 754. There we go. 754. Okay. So that already tells you how much clearance I have. I have 1/1000th clearance, meaning half a thou clearance on my slide to frame. So 0.754 inches. So that is great. Okay. After cutting and everything, 1/1000th clearance. I'm perfectly happy with that. That's half a thousandth on either side. Okay. So now the measurement, to me, that is the most important when I'm cutting rails, is this: the height of this groove. The height of what will become your rail. Okay. So when we're measuring, I'll hold these two side by side here. Okay. Let's see if you guys can see this. Okay. When I'm measuring the height of this groove, I am measuring the height of the rail on the frame. Okay. When we measure the height of the rail, okay, on the slide, we are measuring what will be the groove in the frame. Okay, so you always have to think backwards. Okay. This smaller measurement, the 632, this is what we're going to be cutting into the frame. And this measurement here, the height of this rail, is how tall that cut will be. All right. So to get into taking those measurements, this is the trickier measurement. All right. I showed a set of feeler gauges beforehand, and this is how I use them. Barring having, excuse me, some very specialized tools. I use these. Okay, so I've got feeler gauges, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick them in the groove. All right. I'm going to stack up feeler gauges in the groove until they just don't fit, and I'm going to find the stack of feeler gauges that fits in there just perfectly. I'm then going to add those feeler gauges up, the thicknesses of those feeler gauges, and that's going to tell me the height of this groove. Okay, so I got these three right here. Let's see here. I already know this one ain't going to fit, but... Oh, actually, nope, that one does. Okay, so I got that one. Let's stick this one in there. Sorry, trying to stay in frame here. You guys can see what all I'm doing here. Okay, so this stack does not fit. So that was, I just thrown the 18 thousandths in there. Pull that back out. Let's see if the 16 fits. So right now I've found the stack that's too big, and I'm just whittling it down. So that was a 16 thousandths. Here's well, let's go to 14. Come on. They stick in these plastic pouches. Well, still not wanting to go in. Okay, so 14, we'll go to 12. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there we go. Now we have a stack of feeler gauges that fits in there nice and snug and perfect. And so all we're going to do, we're going to add up what this is. So again, let the pencil do the memory here. So we got a 25, we got a 24, a 22, a 20, and a 12. So that's a 5, 9, 11, 13, carry our 1, that is 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 10. There we go. So that tells me that this groove in my slide is 103 thousandths tall. Okay. 103 thousandths tall. Now that does not mean that I am cutting a slot that is 103 thousandths tall. That means from the top of my frame, from the top of the frame, okay, from here to the top of the groove is 103 thousandths. So the rail on my frame needs to be 103 thousandths tall. Now the height of the actual groove I'm going to cut in there, that comes from the height of the rail, okay? That comes from this measurement, okay? So let me put these feeler gauges away, and then we'll take that measurement. So remember when I said on the first episode, the more precisely we can measure, the more precisely we can remove material, the more precisely we can cut, the better fit we're going to get at the end of the day. Nobody wants to show their friends, you know, your 2 to 3 months of hard work, frustration with blending and parts not fitting together and everything. And finally you get to the point where this gun is shooting, you show your friends, and you got a sloppy gun. Nobody wants that, okay? So the more precisely we measure up front, and the better we cut, the better product we're going to have at the end of the day. So this is 103. Let's write that in. So this is 0.103 inches. And now our last measurement is this guy right here. Let's come back with the calipers, and I could cheat and just go look at my notes, huh? Yeah, it's the same, 121. Okay, 0.121 inches. So the height of the rail on the slide is 121 thousandths, meaning, again, that is the height of what we are going to cut into the frame, okay? Now, how deep do we cut it in? And this is what I don't like about both the Matrix Precision Jig and the Stealth Arms. Sorry, I got cut off by the camera again. I guess it sees nothing going on for too long, and it shuts itself off or whatever. Okay, so I was talking about the Phantom Jig and the Matrix Precision Jig. Look, they don't tell you. You don't know how far in you're cutting. Okay. I know with the Matrix Precision Jig, you can buy different widths of cutter, but how do you adjust how far down that is from the deck of your frame, okay? How do you know that after you've taken your measurement, so for us 103 thousandths, how do you know that when you start cutting that in that jig, that you have moved down 103 thousandths to start cutting for this? How you can't adjust that, okay? So take the measurements when you're putting these things in there. And it's that's probably why they use such an undersized cutter. I know they use like either like 117 or 118, 119 thousandths wide cutter in those jigs to leave it undersized, because again, we would need a groove cut 121 thousandths. So if you're cutting 119 thousandths, you're leaving for this slide, you're leaving a thousandth on either side. Okay. But you don't know where in relation to the top of the frame that is. So once you got it cut, you still got potentially a big gap on top that you can't control, and that's going to be different. That's going to vary from manufacturer. That's going to vary from slide to slide. That's going to vary from commander to government to 6-inch to officer size. That's going to vary. And those jigs can't control that. So do your best to take your measurements and whatever you can do to curb having the sloppy the sloppy fits up top. Try and do that, okay? But it is what it is, and I'm not putting down those things. Those thousands and thousands and thousands of people have used those to successfully make some great handguns. So they definitely work. I'm just saying, take your measurements up front and know how they're cutting. Take a measurement. Use your calipers. Halfway through, you count how many times you've turned that knob. Take this thing and see, hey, how far down is that cut? Okay, because I know I did my math, and I need to go in 60 thousandths. Okay, I need to go in 60 thousandths to get a nice tight fit. And I've gone 4 turns, and that's 25 thousandths. So do a little division there and find out how much each one of those divisions is, that when you're turning the knob, you know exactly how far in you're cutting, and keep measuring until you get exactly there. Okay, so to get that measurement that I just talked about, how far in you need to cut, we know that our frame is 753 thousandths wide, and the inside of our frame measures 632. So we got 0.753 minus 632. Okay, we'll do that. So we've got 1, 2, 1. So we got 121 thousandths. Man, it's almost like I knew 60 thousandths, right? So 121 thousandths is the total difference between the width of our frame and the inside of our slide. Now we need to divide that by 2, so that would come out to 0.0605 inches. So 60.5 thousandths. That is how deep you need to go in per side. Okay, so 60 thousandths in here, 60 thousandths in here. Okay, on either side to make this, 632 thousandths. All right. So when you're cutting in your jigs, do this math, figure out the height, both the height and how deep in you need to cut, and you can get a better fit rather than just. I'm not saying the instructions are wrong, but you can get a better fit because each slide is going to be different. All right, it's going to be slightly different. So do that. You're going to get a better fit at the end of the day. Now here's the big thing. I talked earlier about You don't need lapping compound. And I'm serious, you don't, okay? You can. I'm not saying it doesn't work, okay? It works. People use it all over the country all the time. Somebody probably used it today, and it works. Nothing wrong with using it. But it's sloppy, it's messy, and here's why I don't like it, okay? Up front, it's going to feel like you have a super smooth fit. And you do, because you have polished the inside of all the mating surfaces. But here's what you've done. We'll just say that these two lines are your two mating surfaces, okay? Now you've put lapping compound in your frame and your slide, and you're running them back and forth together, and you're lapping them, okay? So you have material. Material being the actual compound in between your frame and your slide. Well, you probably already see where I'm going with this. If you've got material, if you've got lapping compound in between your frame and your slide, how do you have perfect fit? Because once you wash this out, once you take all this out, well, now there's a gap there. So how did you attain a perfect fit? It feels nice because everything is polished in. So it glides really smoothly. And you're like, man, this is awesome. This is great. Until you start working on the gun and everything starts to wear into each other anyways. And then that gap gets even bigger. Okay? That's why I don't like it. And two, it's a pain in the butt to get out of your gun. You basically got to like take it over to the sink and like pressure wash the thing out, or put it in the ultrasonic, okay, to get all of this little tiny particulate lapping compound out. Otherwise, it's going to be in every little crevice and hole in your gun, in all these little places, because it gets just everywhere, okay, and you're going to be cleaning that out of your gun for a while. So that's why I don't like it. And here's how you don't need it. Now, I talked about stones, okay? Stones and needle files are your friend here, and taking good measurements, all right? I don't need them. I'll just show you, okay? Now, when you first put this together, okay, if it's too tight, what you need to do is mark your frame. All right, you need to take a Sharpie or something, and you need to mark your frame, okay, and see where it's too tight. Now, if you properly decked your jig, okay, if you needed to make a deck height adjustment, if you were too tall, which is very common, don't freak out if it is. Okay, there are deck height jigs or frame decking jigs out there. I know Matrix Precision has one. I don't know how Stealth Arms compensates for it, although. Maybe they just make them all like this, where they're inspect to begin with, and you don't have to worry about it. But there are other 80% frames out there. Do not buy tactical machining. Terrible experience with one of the. Well, not me, but my friend. I had to spend a whole day correcting his frame. It was terrible, and it still turned out halfway decent. Okay. Where was I going with this? Fitting your slide, okay? If you're using those undersized cutters, okay, you're gonna end up with the slot that's gonna be too small, all right? Now, your first instinct might be to try and take some sort of needle file and to get in here and to try and file one of these surfaces away, okay? That's not the way to do it, okay? The way to do it, okay, if you have a properly decked frame, okay, to where when this slide does get on this frame, it's going to be fine top to bottom from here, the top of the frame to the bottom of the slide inside interior. If that measurement is good, you need to remove material from the bottom of your slide. Okay, do not try to remove material from the inside of a slot. That's never going to end well, okay? And the way you can do that is you take yourself something flat, either a glass pane. If you have a surface plate, I guess you could use a surface plate. Not everybody's got a surface plate. I don't have a surface plate. You can use something like this, which is just an aluminum sheet. glass pane, granite tile, glass tile, something like that, something that's flat and smooth. Put yourself a piece of sandpaper down with some WD-40 on the edge, and just go back and forth. Okay. You can also make a sanding block, a small sanding block. Okay. You can take like your handy file. Okay. Wrap it with sandpaper. Put this in your bench vise, and if you're good with draw filing, you can draw file with the sandpaper, the fine grit sandpaper. I'm talking 320 at a max. Okay, 320 at a max. Put this in your bench vise. Okay, and you can come back and forth, nice even strokes, to start removing material. All right, until it fits. Now, what I'll tell you is every time you do a test fit on your frame, deburr the frame. Okay. No matter what method you use to cut your rails, you're going to have a burr. You're going to raise a burr. That's just how cutting metal works. Okay, so you need to take a needle file, or you know what? Don't take sandpaper. Take a needle file, either needle file or a stone, and come across the corners here. Okay, come across the corners here. Knock that burr off and feel it. Feel it with your hand. Okay, your fingers are more sensitive than you think. Okay, and take all those burrs out. Come across here and run it on the inside of the slot that you just cut. Get those burrs off, because when you put your slide on, those burrs will mess you up more than you think. You'll be sitting there and it's going to be like barely going, and you're like, oh man, I need to remove a ton of material, okay, everywhere. And you're going to go and you're gonna put this in your vise, and you're going to remove some material here. Okay, you're going to come off. You go, oh well, maybe the deck height was 1/1000th off, so you're going to put some sandpaper down, and you're going to remove some material here, or maybe you think your rails are too wide because you're seeing marking on the top. All right, if you got a problem with burrs and you marked your frame, you threw your slide on and it was really crunchy and hard, and it was really stiff to put it on, really hard to put it on. You're like hitting it with a rubber mallet and stuff. You take it off and you see all these marks along here, all these contact points. You're going to think, oh man, my rails are too wide. I need to take them down. I need to take them in. So you'll sit there and all right, sorry, memory card full. I had to go put in a different memory card. Okay, so like I was saying with the rail stoning fixture, I'm not going to remove a whole lot of material. Keep them oiled up really well and clean them up often, because the particulate matter, especially from aluminum, is going to build up on the stones a lot, and it's going to gum them up, and you're not going to cut, and then it's going to embed itself into the stone. It's going to be really hard to clean your stone out, especially with non-ferrous metals like aluminum. With steel, they come right out. Aluminum, you need to pay more attention to it. Okay, that is going to be how you remove fine amounts of material for fine adjustments. But anyways, back to the point of removing burrs. Anytime you put this on for a new fit, deburr. Okay. Just by deburring, I have seen, slides go from, jerky, crunchy on, take it off, deburr it, and then, we have a nice fit, okay? And this is what we ended up with on this gun, all right? There's some careful measurements. I did do some slight adjustments to this, but again, having the mill is really nice because I can make all the cuts right the first time. So this is really smooth. There's no rock, and the slide is going to be a really tight fitting gun. It's going to be a really smooth gun at the end of the day. And here's the hint: even if you do end up with a little bit of wiggle in your slide, don't worry about it, because once we put the barrel in, and once we get the lower lugs fit, all that's going to be taken out, because the whole gun is going to be pushed up. Okay. By the lower lugs and the slide stop. So all that play is going to get taken out anyways, all right? So if there's a little bit of rock in there, don't worry. It usually sounds a whole lot worse than it actually is. But that is how you fit a frame without using lapping compound. Careful measurements, marking your frame and adjusting as you go. Just either stone or file on the contact points where you see whatever marking compound you're using, whether it's a Sharpie or die chem. Wherever you see that rubbed off, that's where you want to hit it, in that spot only. Just make sure you're going slow and taking your time. All right. So now that we've talked about completing your frame, I mean, your rails, the only other thing left to do is just to drill these 2 holes. Okay. And that's going to be on your jig. Just make sure you use the proper size drills. Most kits will give you one, and these are standard size drills. One's a 5/32, I believe, or 3/32. I can't remember. It's 110 and 157 thousandths. If you have a full drill index, just go into your drill index, and after measuring the actual pin themselves, measure the actual pin. Sometimes they're undersized, sometimes they're oversized. Measure the actual pin, and then go to a drill index and see what drill fits it the best. Okay. If you've been metalworking for quite a bit and you're familiar with using reamers, okay, and drilling undersized and using a reamer, do that. You're going to get the best fit possible. The real key important thing to pay attention to when you're drilling these is make sure that you drill them straight and parallel. All right, straight and parallel is really important to your trigger job. Parallel more than anything, okay? Because if your 2 pins are cattywampus like this, all right, your sear, that is how your sear is now going to engage into your hammer hooks, and that's not cool. You want them to be parallel to each other so that you have nice, straight, even engagement. And I'm talking about the sear and the hammer here. The sear and the hammer need to have straight and even contact with each other all the way across. So if one is walked over, okay, if one of your pins, okay, is not straight and it's walked over, you lost all that. All right, so take your time with these. If you have a good drill press, use it. Again, hardened, like I said before, hardened drill bushings. Keep your drills aligned. All right, unless you have like a really good drill press that's really accurate. And I'm talking about coming down and up accurate, or a milling machine. I would not do these all in one shot. I do one side, flip it over, realign your jig, and do the other side. Okay, that's going to be your best shot at keeping those nice and straight and accurate, instead of trying to go all the way through and having your drill bit walk over. Okay, that would be my best advice. All right, now keep in mind those 2 pins, the hammer and the sear pin, they have flanges. They're flared out on one side, so you will need to come back and put a chamfer on the left side of the frame. Okay, on the left side of the frame for those chamfers, for the pins to sit flush. It's a 90-degree chamfer. Okay, so you can get a 90-degree chamfer tool just about anywhere. Throw it in your drill, and I mean, I'm not saying just go at it. Okay, be careful, go slow, take your time. Make sure that this is held down, securely, so it doesn't want to, try and go around on you. Have your pin there, hit it a little bit, drop your pin in, and just kind of repeat that until it goes flush. Okay. If you got a mill, all right, and you can measure your Z-axis down feed into it, it's about 20 to 25 thousandths down. That's your best starting point. 20 to 25 thousandths. Again, just kind of back it off, blow it out, drop your pin in, and do that until it goes flush. All right. Now just keep in mind, while you're doing that, the pin is naturally going to stick out the other side. All right, so if you've got it down on like a flat surface and you're doing this, and you're like, oh man, like let me hit it a little bit more, boom. Like, well, man, it's still proud. Like, okay, I'm gonna take it out, I'm gonna hit it some more. Well, man, it's still proud. Well, that's because your pin is bottoming out against whatever is underneath it. You need to pick it up and put it through, because your pin is going to stick out the other side of the frame slightly. Okay. So that's my my trick for that, my tip for that anyways. All right, so that's your frame. If you got more questions, drop them down in the comments below. I know that was long and drawn out, but that is why I don't believe in lapping compound. That is how I take measurements from the slide and transfer them to the frame. That is my those are my tips to you for using the the rail cutting jigs like the Matrix and the Stealth Arms jig for getting the best results. Make sure you've got all your measurements up front and you know what your jigs are doing and you know how far they're cutting. Then after that, just mark it and go slow. Okay, wherever you're contacting, wherever you're oversized, fitting is as normal with a 1911. Find the contact points, find the wear points, and attack after that. Okay, slow and steady won the race here. Okay, this is not an AR-15. This is not a Glock build. This is going to take you some time to do right and to do well. But the reward at the end of the day is really awesome. Okay, you can throw a Glock together in an hour and a half. You might get one thing done in an hour and a half here. All right. So now we got a completed frame. Let's move on to the slide, and let's get our barrel and our bushing fit. Okay, so I'm gonna get this cleared off, and we'll come right back, and you'll see how we got to having this all nice and cute and polished up and fit in. Okay, so I'll see you in a second.